There's a lot of shame and guilt around money. If you can't provide financially, for example, for your partners and family, most people would feel shame and guilt, and that manifests itself into the physical reaction of stress. What we're trying to do is create space in the mind, right? So calm down, so less stress, then create space in the mind for ways to get more financially confident with dealing with that particular situation that you've got at the moment.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Finding Equilibrium, and today I'm joined with another very special guest, Andrew Fleming. And Andrew's got a fascinating story, and we'll get into that in a moment. But Andrew's the founder and the creator of Financial Mindfulness, which is a digital app. I've taken it, and it really provides a lot of awareness and insight into your own financial well-being. So, Andrew, thank you very much. I love that backdrop. How are you today? I'm
great, thank you, Lawrence, and thank you for taking the time for this podcast. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. So, I've downloaded your app, and I've taken the questions, and it's given me some really good insights, and I've done some of your free courses that are really useful. But you now, the founder of something which is quite very useful at all times, but particularly now. So maybe take us back. So how did it all start? How did you get to found Financial Mindfulness? What was the starting point?
So the idea came about 4.5 years ago, and I was in a really dark space. I was in hospital, and as part of my recovery, I was introduced to mindfulness, which I had no clue about what it was in terms of practicing mindfulness. And I did 10 minutes a day, and it was on a digital app. And it was about the fourth day that it actually started to have a positive impact on me. It sort of calmed me down somewhat. I could think clearer and focus better. And my background is in finance. So a former chief financial officer and business owner in financial advice. And I thought, hang on, there's something here. The two worlds of finances and mindfulness, and applying those two disciplines has real benefit. So that planted the seed. Then I went about forming a team and finding a problem. And listen, I knew what the problem was through my experience in the financial world and dealing with financial clients. And it was financial stress. People really do worry about their money. And unfortunately, in our society, you need to earn a certain level of income to sustain a certain type of lifestyle. And the financial system is not easy to deal with, and it's always changing. And we're marketed with so many different financial products, and it's difficult to fully understand what's going on with them and how it applies to you. So I went about forming a team, and it wasn't hard in terms of getting some leading Australian experts in neuropsychology. So there's 2 neuropsychologists in the team. There's 2 financial experts, and I have an advisory committee made up of some industry leaders, which is for a startup, an advisory committee is really important. I highly suggest that anyone in a startup phase to do so. And we went about researching and developing everything to do with financial stress and financial well-being. And we believe that financial stress is a barrier to financial well-being. And so we focused on the problem. So Financial Mindfulness is a program which measures and reduces people's financial stress. And it does that through the financial stress index, of which you said, Lawrence, you undertook recently in the app. So in order to change something, we believe that to quantify change, you need to measure it. And so there needs to be a measurement tool of some sort. So a lot of development went into the financial stress index. And with the neuropsychologists and the financial experts, we went around the world and saw what research had already been done. And we saw gaps in relation to how people behave with money and the symptoms of financial stress. So we built this index of 35 statement questions, of which people answer on a frequency scale, how it relates to them in the last month. And the 35 questions are based on five biopsychosocial dimensions. So we measure on financial status, behavioural impact, social engagement, physical and physiological, and psychological. Because financial stress isn't just about what you earn, where you sit on the wealth spectrum. It's all encompassing. And an example I like to give is there's a lot of shame and guilt around money. If you can't provide financially, for example, for your partners and family, most people would feel shame and guilt, and that manifests itself into the physical reaction of stress. Another example I like to quote is, if I had my best friends around for a Sunday barbecue, and let's say I recently discovered I had prostate cancer, I'm more likely to tell my friends that I've got prostate cancer than I went to the RSL the night before and dropped $1,000 on the poker machine, or I can't afford the upcoming school term fees for my children. There's just too much shame. And we understand that people, it's very personal and they're not going to share that. So we measure all sorts of things, including shame and guilt, in relation to financial stress. And this is really important because to measure it properly allows us to then build a better solution and track change. So how do we reduce financial stress? We integrate financial literacy, mindfulness, goal setting, and behavioural tools on financial topics such as paying bills, managing credit cards, managing mortgages, unexpected expenses. We're just about to release the How to Budget module, and hopefully before the end of the year, loss of employment. So every 3 months we plan to release a new module content, of which there's another 20 to come. And they include divorce and separation, borrowing money and relationships in general. So we're really excited to be able to have the quality of the team around us to build this content and the behavioural change.
That's amazing what you've done in terms of really building up that platform and those questions. But I'm really interested to know, because you've had a lot of people downloading the app and providing those insights. So I understand the benefit and I understand the opportunity for individuals. Are there any broader insights that you can share with us in terms of what you're seeing, given the I guess the extraordinary context that we're in at the moment, and the importance of financial well-being, or finance as a source of stress or well-being, but when there is a lot of uncertainty, we become more focused on that, and that can create those consequences that you describe. Are there some broad insights that you can share with us as to what the state is at the moment within Australia or anywhere else?
Yes, there is, and fortunately for us, we did launch last year, and we got a good snapshot of how people were reacting to financial stress and their symptoms before the pandemic.
Right, interesting.
And then we have tracked over the last 6 months, and we will do so every 6 months, and we'll report to the market in terms of this is what's going on for Australians. So our last media release, which was only a couple of weeks ago, did get headline news around Australia. And the reason for that is we found that there was an 8-fold increase in people acting aggressively to each other's
Really interesting.
with their financial situation. And I like to test these findings that these high-level findings that we find out about with other things that are going on that we know of. And it so happens that domestic violence and women ringing legal hotlines in relation to domestic violence is skyrocketed. So obviously with spending more time at home, if with whoever you're living with, or if you are alone when you know at home, this type of consequence is really serious. And aggression doesn't mean you're going to become violent, but it starts there. So then I spoke to a friend who goes surfing every morning, and he said that on the waves, it's getting really abusive. Like people are swearing at each other. And he said this is his Zen place. And then all of a sudden it's not Zen because people are being aggressive. And I don't know if you've noticed on the roads, but there's been a tick up of people being aggressive in driving and how they react. And, you know, that's just my experience outside of the proof that we've got with financial stress and aggression. But I think people are angry with what's happening.
I was going to say, I mean, you just look at social media and it feels that there is a lot of anger. Everyone's angry, and it shows up in the types of comments. People can be very short, like just looking at social media and the other examples that you show. It's interesting on the waves and on the roads, but social media, which gives us a good, I guess, a snapshot of how people are feeling, and you see some innocent posts that are shared, and people react in a much more aggressive way than you'd expect. So I think there is definitely a lot of anger, a lot of uncertainty, and as humans, we don't like uncertainty, even though uncertainty has been a part of our lives forever. And because so much, and we were talking before, it's like so much has changed in terms of the rule books, because we've got used to, whether you like the rules or not, you know, we live in a capitalist society, and we've learnt the rules, and those rules are changing, and that's having huge impacts, and none of us know how it's going to end, and that makes things scary. But the things that we were predicting, you know, I was talking to someone before, this time last year we were planning holidays and, you know, travel, and, you know, and like 2020 completely different to any of us expected, and we can have a detailed discussion about that. There's a lot of benefit that's come out of this reset or change, but there's a huge amount of stress, and I think it does come down to having financial resilience around how you deal with money. I see it in many ways, you know, because I deal with a lot of businesses and individuals around well-being, and you could argue that financial well-being is the foundation of all of well-being, because we often talk about food being the foundation or sleep being the foundation, but financial well-being creates a lot of stress. And the point you said before, I think, is worth underlying, because it's very similar to food. Like in the food world, it can be very, very confusing for people to know how to eat well. And you look at that in the financial world, it's very confusing. Like everything's confusing. Like to be able to plan your future, manage your retirement, find jobs, say, you know, there's a lot of jargon, which makes it very, very challenging for people. And also it's perceived to be quite, it's a dry topic. So not everybody feels comfortable or wants to spend their time really understanding their finance. Anything that makes financial well-being or financial situations more accessible is going to be a good thing. So it's very interesting that you're seeing that level of behavior change and driving. Are there any other insights as well that's come through from the research?
Well, when we did research this product to make the solution, we found that, well, I didn't get taught financial literacy at school. Don't know about you, but a
No, I
lot of
didn't.
schools.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I've literally learned like I did with all other aspects of well-being. To be honest, I've learned by reading books and learning by doing, because nobody taught me financial well-being. I think they teach you about getting a career and earning money, but no one teaches you what to do with the money, how to save the money. And also when you're quite young, and certainly I was like that, you're not necessarily thinking about pensions or future in the way. You're much more thinking about, buying a home or going on holiday, and the things that are more now. So there's definitely a gap in in education for sure.
There's a huge gap, and it shows up with how people behave with their money and the decisions they make around what to buy, what financial product do they use. And when I left school, I didn't get a lot of mail, generally. There was mail from the school, you get your results and junk mail, but all of a sudden I was getting mail from the big four banks for a credit card application form, from American Express. And I was bombarded with credit card application forms. And some of them were pre-approved. It was ridiculous. So what we see is that young people engage in a credit card, and you sign the application form, off it goes, and in the mail comes the card itself, and you start using it. But what a lot of people fail, and it's 1 in 2 people, fail to understand how a credit card works at a granular level. So 1 in 2 people fail a simple compound interest test. And compound interest is the main formula that's driving a credit card. And when I say we, there's a large part of society that don't understand that you need to pay your credit card at the end of the anniversary in full. And what we're seeing is people are not doing that. And an example would be if you put $1,500 in any one month on the credit card, they will pay $800, let's say. So they're paying the credit card, but not in full. So what's happening is the 30-day interest-free period expires, and then interest starts calculating from that day. And they get in the habit of using the credit card, but not paying the full amount. And it shows up in the statistics, because in Australia at any one time, there's about $45 billion of outstanding credit card debt,
Really that
of
much?
which it's that much.
Wow.
And of that, here's the shocking statistic, 26 billion are balances accruing interest at 19.95% interest.
Wow. So it's not actually goods that have been purchased, it's just that interest. So, wow.
And if you're teaching your children, and I'm not going to name names in terms of financial products, but buy now, pay later schemes are even worse.
Yes.
And it's worse on the behaviour of how people buy goods and services, because the fact that you pay at the time of purchase 25% or 30%, whatever, and you do it over instalments over the next 4 or 5 weeks, that's not how you should buy goods or services. If you were teaching your children financial literacy, you wouldn't say, there's this product out there that you can get, sign up, they'll give it to you, pre-approved, and you go and buy your goods and services using this, and you pay it in the future. You would say save up and then buy it. So we are bombarded in society with savvy marketed products that are putting us in a worse position.
Yes. And I suppose if we're not, because really what you're saying is, if you go out and you buy something with a credit card and say it's $100, but you only pay off $50, in truth, that product is going to cost you considerably more than that, if you look at it in terms of real cost. And I suppose that's what we've got to be aware of, because when you think about financial literacy, we often don't think about how to buy, because it is a real skill. If you go into the professional world, I've worked with the big supermarkets, and you speak to professional buyers who know how to buy and how to negotiate, if you like. But from a personal point of view, it's exactly the same. As consumers, we need to know how to buy and really calculate the true cost, and then we can make a decision: is it worth it? If this product is going to cost the advertised price $100, but it's really going to cost me $2,000, if I look at it over a long time, then do I really want whatever it is? That would really help us to take back more control of our choices and make better decisions. That's really insightful. Thank you.
Well, an American finance commentator, Dave Ramsey is his name, I heard him say that credit cards are the most marketed product in the world.
Right.
And then I sat back and thought about that, and I went, well, frequent flyer points, reward points, balance transfers, there are all these bells and whistles and things that are glossed up.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, why are they doing this? Because they make a lot of money for the issuer, the credit card issuer.
It's interesting. So what's your advice to somebody who's listening and has a credit card? Because I've heard advice and people say, cut up your credit cards, get rid of them all. So that's one thing. But credit cards, of course, make life easier in terms of using, and particularly if you pay off your debt. But what is your advice to somebody who just really wants to get a handle of their buy-in, their spending, and their debt?
So we cover all of this in the app, in the Managing Credit Cards knowledge and skills section. But simple things that someone can do are, listen, the ease of using a credit card, especially today, and because people are using less cash and more encouraged to use tap via a credit card or Apple Pay or whatever the case may be, because of COVID, and a lot of purchases of goods and services are going online. So how do you do that? Well, most people don't use an electronic transfer to do it. They use a credit card. Simple things that people can do are setting up a direct debit from your savings bank account, where your pay gets put into, that it pays the balance in full at the end of the month automatically. So there's a sweep.
Okay.
So if you're doing that, you're basically setting up the fact that you can use the credit card and get all the benefits in relation to, it's easy to buy goods and services without paying credit card interest. That's one simple thing to do. Now, as I said, the proof is in the statistics. $26 billion of balances accruing at 20%. So that's one simple thing people can do, and then they can get the benefits. And most credit cards charge an annual fee, and that annual fee might be low enough to then get your frequent flyers and whatnot. But there is a very simple thing you can do.
No, that's a really good tip. What about someone who, and I'm just very mindful of the environment we're in, and people are losing their jobs or worried about losing jobs. What would you say to someone who is experiencing a lot of financial stress? And when you're in that level of stress, it can feel like you're out of control, and there's no solution, because it feels like the world's closing in on you. Sometimes that's a reality, and other times it's not, because there's losing your job, so it's happened, and then there's the fear of losing your job, which might not happen. But what would advice would you give, or tools that you have that could help someone in that context right now?
So financial stress, and this is just from my personal experience, it's a different form of stress than, let's say, you're getting married and it's 6 months away, and you're stressed about this and you're
Mm,
stressed about the caterers and you're stressed, whatever the case may be.
mm,
Financial stress has this locking impact, and well, it did on me, and it really debilitated my ability to think clearly,
mm.
and that shows up in Australia. We found that the lost productivity in Australian businesses, any 1 year, it's $32 billion a year in lost
Wow.
productivity because of financial stress. And that's no surprise, because people come to work, they're worried about what's happening with their money. They turn on the computer and they start, for example, speaking to their bank or trying to consolidate loans or trying to do something, but actually not focusing on the work. So that is just one example of, they call that presenteeism.
Mm,
So you come to work, but you're not really present on the work. So it depends on the severity of people, in whether they're in financial hardship or are managing, but are not managing the mental health aspect of financial stress. So if someone's in financial hardship, it really, those support lines are very helpful. And I encourage anyone who is in financial hardship to ring and try and get a financial counsellor for free. And these people help you negotiate with banks, let's say, and there are hardship provisions which support the person in financial stress.
okay.
And there's hardship provisions in most financial products, of which most people wouldn't understand that. So in terms of how you can actually manage your stress right now, that's what we are doing with the app. And the app is just one of many things that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty hard to accept for a lot of people that you're in this situation and you don't know where to go to next. So, and you don't know how to help yourself to dig yourself out of the hole. So you can only move forward if, firstly, you accept you're in this position.
Mm.
And then secondly, be brave enough to then make the tough choices. And those tough choices mean, you might have to sell the house. You might have to sell the family car. You might, it's different for everyone, but there needs to be acceptance of the problem.
Yes.
And then from there you can move forward.
Yes. I think that's really, really good advice. And I think what you touch on, and I'd love to hear a bit more about your own experience, but, people go through hard times all of the time, but the very first step is just accepting it and then seeking advice from someone who can really help you. And I'd love to just dig into that, because that world of support, and there's hardship free financial counselors, and that's there, and that's probably the first place to go if you're in extreme financial distress. But if you're not, you're just worried about losing your job or losing your income stream, it's really seeking advice from someone or something that can really help give you clarity. Because I think once that the stress increases when you're not sure what to do about it, there's a problem, you might be embarrassed, as you were saying before, to actually talk to someone about it, because you're admitting a degree of let's use the word failure, like I've I've failed in this area. And in our society, I guess we do put arguably an unnecessary amount of value around financial achievements in those areas. But then speaking to someone who has your best interest, because as we were saying about the credit cards, there's always kind of clever marketing that can pull you in without making you fully aware of the true costs. Because I've never seen the credit card companies really say, well, actually, if you if you buy this credit card, the good news is you can get it interest free forever. But the bad news is you're going to actually pay like 30 times the actual cost. They tend not to say that because people will be aware of it, and that's so they give only half of the picture. And I think it's going to be very true of other financial products as well. They're not always telling you what the true cost is of a particular service, but your app can really help. So as a starting point, because I know you've got some really useful, quite short, educational videos that just really help to bring that awareness and can signpost people into directions that they need to go if each of those areas is a problem for them.
Well, behaviour change, as you know, is actually quite difficult, and it requires a sustained period of time of attempting to make the change. So the app itself, we provide daily tips via the notification that comes out at 8:15 in the morning, and they're just bite-sized little pieces of information that then they learn a little bit for like 30 seconds, and then we call them tip and taps. You tap it and the notification takes you into the app itself for that relevant content. And so whether it's the financial literacy around learning a mortgage and how it works, or a credit card, or unexpected expenses, or the skills in relation to setting goals around how to get yourself out of that position that you're in at the moment, but more importantly, avoid it going forward so you don't make that same mistake twice. Yeah. And so an example would be a mortgage holder. So someone who isn't in financial distress and is doing quite well, but they let's say husband and wife, and they go and buy that dream home that or the white picket fence, the Great Australian Dream, and Sydney prices are up there in terms of one of the most expensive in the world. So are mortgages. They're up there, and statistics say that the amount of debt ratio that we've got is too high. We seem to borrow more than we need to, but buying your home provides more than just let's say meeting a Great Australian Dream notion. For most people, it provides a place of security, safety, a place where you can bring up your children. It's viewed as a stable investment, and it's your home. You can build on it, grow on it, renovate it, and that brings a lot of peace of mind and utility for people. And what ends up happening is that if someone has a big mortgage, let's say, on their home, we ask them to identify, why did you buy the home in the first place? What were those feelings? What was it like when you first went through that door? Why are you doing this? So rather than focus on the negative of, I'm paying this thing off for decades, let's focus on what you've got. Let's focus on, this is providing all of these benefits in your life. And making people aware of why they did the thing in the first place when it comes to buying a home is really important. And it puts it into perspective. So we're basically slightly changing the way we look at things. Now, if someone has borrowed too much, or there's change in income along the way, and there always is, and you change jobs, there are things you can do to maintain that level of manageability around the mortgage. Worst case scenario, you have to sell the house. But let's face it, if that's the worst thing you need to do in life, that's okay.
Yes.
You'll have enough money to live somewhere else. Changing expectations. So a lot of people set high expectations, and when they don't meet those expectations, like keeping up with the Joneses, they live miserable lives.
Yes.
You don't actually have to do that.
No, for sure.
Money, yeah. So we should be not going to work to live for work. We should be working to live.
Yes, for sure. I think you touch on, I mean, again, it's very cultural in the sense of those kind of external benefits that we look to spend money to buy homes, to buy cars, with the hope that it will bring us some level of fulfillment, some level of happiness. But I think, as we know, through history, is that often those things are temporary. We want the dream home, and we stretch ourselves, and when we get there, we realize, well, maybe we don't need such a large home, because that home is actually costing us a lot in terms of we're having to work and change our lifestyle. I'd love to bring in, because what I think is unique about what you've created, and just to bring us right back to the beginning of our conversation, is that mindfulness element and that kind of internal life, if you like, in terms of really understanding that. But you touched on that you started, and was it mindful meditation that you were doing for 10 minutes a day at the beginning? Okay, so you started a practice of mindful meditation when you were in hospital, and that kind of helped, and it took a while. Is that something you still practice on a regular basis in terms of mindful meditation? That's kind of one question. And the other question I'd love to understand is how mindfulness and financial well-being go hand in hand. Like, how can we use that mindfulness tool to help us be to help avoid financial stress or move towards financial well-being, depending on how you look at it?
Okay, first question. What do I do currently with mindfulness? Well, I must admit, even though I'm the founder of Financial Mindfulness, I'm not the best meditator. I do it, and if I, during the day, start to get wound up, and you can feel it in the body, so whenever there's some type of uncomfortable pain, there's something going wrong. So I actually just focus on my breathing. I just sort of stop, and it can only be for 30 seconds, just taking those big breaths and doing it meditatively. So holding on to the breaths and then releasing it. And then in my mind, I focus on the air itself coming in and out. And so once it hits the end, so I'm thinking, and I really get into the moment.
That's a real, like the breath is a way of resetting your nervous system and calming yourself down. So that's great, because that's what you do during those moments when you can feel that your body is getting into a state of stress.
And the other thing I do is, and I do this every night, is I use a meditative sleep session that goes for 45 minutes. So, so I put that on the floor next to my bed, and I put the volume up so it's comfortable, and I go to sleep that way. And I find that it starts to help me unwind, and that's releasing stress.
Yes.
So and sometimes I twitch sometimes, and I think that's just a quirky thing that happens to me, and I feel like that the nervous system is just relaxing a bit, and it sends a few twitches through the muscles, but that's healthy.
Yes. Yeah, that's cool. And then the role of mindfulness in financial well-being, because one of the things that run through my mind is it's a bit like eating. There's a lot of mindless eating, and so a lot of people will not be aware of what they eat because we're doing so many other things. And it's similar with spending. We kind of do. It's like a tool that we use to help make us feel better. Because we're spending, but we're not really consciously thinking about it in the way that you described, and that's why it's easy because of credit cards. It is quite easy to rack up a big debt. As you were saying, even as a student, and I had the same experience. Every credit card in the land wants you as a customer, but they don't educate you how to use it responsibly as a tool. So you're set wild, and then suddenly it's like, wow, I've got all this money, I can buy all this stuff, but you're not mindlessly thinking about the downside, because, and this is one of the real benefits as you get older, is that you're aware of the upside and the downside, because we've got experience. when you're young, you haven't got the experience. You can learn from other people's experience, but we've all done it. We've all kind of been there and use credit cards and thought to ourselves, we'll worry about it later. But later always comes. That's the key. So it's how you bring mindfulness into your spending. Are there any other applications of mindfulness within the context of a financial well-being approach?
So what we do with the mindfulness sessions in the modules themselves, they're being specifically written for that topic, whether it be expense or the mortgages or credit cards or paying the bills. And those scripts are just for that particular topic. We write them in a way that does the intro. So it sets yourself up just like normal mindfulness meditation. You set yourself up, you focus on the breath, you get into a calmer state. And then in the middle of the session, we are talking about what feelings come up when you think of the stress related to your credit card or mortgage. What how do you accept it? What do you think you can do about it? And so what we're trying to do is create space in the mind, right? So calm down, so less stress, then create space in the mind for ways to get more financially confident with dealing with that particular situation that you've got at the moment. And it's all positive in relation to trying to help the user get more confident around dealing with this particular issue that they may or may not have.
Yes.
So there's two benefits to it. It's the calming down, and then it's the thought process in relation to asking those particular questions to create space in your mind to think about even a solution, about what you can do for yourself. So we are empowering users,
yes,
which is what we want to do. And ultimately, we want them to make the next right financial decision for them, mindfully.
No, and so, I love that. I mean, it just really highlights that it's almost the opposite to what you said before about presenteeism. When people are in financial stress and they're looking for solutions, they're not working, they can't think, and then they're scrapping around looking for some kind of solution. But by bringing mindfulness into that situation, of course, you calm the nervous system down, you can think more clearly, and then you can decide. And I think whatever the problem, there's always a solution. Someone once told me that years ago, and it's always the thing that I remind myself whenever I'm in those moments of confusion, if you like, of which path should I take. And it's like, well, there is a solution here, just can't see it at the moment. Taking that.
Learn from our mistakes.
So you learn from your mistakes.
From our mistakes. Well, we want you to learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
And so by bringing that to your attention to change behaviour, so you don't repeat the same behaviour. And a good one, when I was going through my divorce, a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of financial pain. I wanted something to make me feel good. Now I had the Apple iPhone, but the Google Pixel phone was new. And I thought, oh, hang on, I'm building this tech company. I made up some stupid excuse that I need to go and buy this Google Pixel phone. So I did, and it cost, over $1,000. And then I don't use it. 2 weeks in, I don't need two phones. And then I got buyer's remorse. And I really could afford that extra phone onto my credit card debt. So we want our users to identify those situations and then learn that they actually don't need that. What do they call it? The shopping Black Friday American concept is not flowing into Australia now. But 70% of goods that are bought on sale don't get used. So we buy it because it's on sale.
That's incredible.
We buy,
70%.
we buy it because someone's saying, like, there's two for the price of one, or there's whatever the combination is.
Mm,
You don't need two of that. You don't need three of that. You actually just needed one. But because it was marketed in a particular way, and you feel like you're buying
they're getting a
mindfully and
deal or
smart,
something. Yeah.
getting a deal.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting. It's all marketing. You know, my background's marketing, and you realize that marketing as a tool can be used as a force for good or a force for, a force for negativity, encouraging people to buy stuff that they don't want, and that's what gives marketing, you know, a bad reputation, because ultimately you're bringing you're bringing awareness to things, but creating a frenzy of spending is not necessarily the way to go.
So I wrote an article a couple of years ago for Money and Life, and it was about Christmas, and they wanted tips afterwards. But I basically said that there's quite a bit of, even when people are in financial stress, when it comes to Christmas and the Christmas dinner or the lunch or whatever the case may be, or in the entertaining, they still go all out. And there are different reasons why people are doing that. Is they want to put on a show that everything's okay. This is Christmas. It's the time for festivity. But really, it's gone on the credit card, and there's going to be the January hangover of credit cards when that bill comes in. And we don't need to go nuts on Christmas spending. We don't need 2 turkeys or hams. We don't. So,
Yes.
so
I mean, it touches really, and we're almost out of time, but it touches really on almost a systemic problem. And it goes back to what we were saying about the rules are changing. And this is one of the rules that we've lived with more, if you like, that more equals better, rather than, and you know, we've come from the Second World War, where there wasn't a lot of resources, and then it's almost there was a compensation for that, which has just got a little bit out of control. And it's really around, I'd love your view in terms of how can we help, because we can empower the individual as you're doing through tools and education. I think that's the most powerful thing, because ultimately the individual has a lot of power, because ultimately if they don't buy, then no one's going to create those products, and all of that waste, 70% of goods. That's shocking. You know, that's a shocking statistic when you look at it in a broader context of, exactly. I mean, amazing environment, you know, there's like so much waste there, but the individual, it's almost like this year has really taught us about, because it's been the year of reset. You know, there's been so many labels for this year, but let's call it the year of reset. And it has given us an opportunity to really assess what's really important. And I think when you look at those things, you might realize that having 2 iPhones is not necessarily as important as being able to just go to the beach. And I'm looking at that amazing view behind you, and some of those things which helps us with that internal, like really asking those questions, what's important to us, so that can then determine how we actually behave. But do you think that the system will change, that the credit cards will be held more to account in terms of behaving more responsibly? Do you think this will change in the foreseeable future, so that people aren't necessarily manipulated and exploited, which you could argue is actually happening because people are not given the whole picture, and few people, I would argue, do as much research as required. You know, there's going to be an element of society that will research and educate themselves, but the vast majority won't do that. They'll go on someone's advice and then create and start to, you know, live our lives and create problems. But the credit card companies, the financial services, the banks, you know, they have a responsibility, and you know, I'd love your view as to whether you think that will change to support people's financial well-being.
No.
Short answer. So, which makes it even more important for us individuals to become financially literate. Okay. Well, listen.
Making the next right decision when it comes to your money.
Okay. So, are there any last words that you'd like to say to somebody who has decided, based on this conversation, that their financial literacy is not as good as it needs to be, and this is an area of focus as we come towards the end of the new year? Because that decision to educate yourself around financial around how finances work, personal finances work, will pay back significantly in terms of reduced stress, but also in terms of financial well-being. But what would you say? Where's the best place for someone to start on this journey?
So the app that we've developed is in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. It's called Financial Mindfulness.
Okay.
And it's free. So when you download and sign up, you are asked the financial stress. You complete the financial stress index, and you get a now where you are in relation to the index, and you can track yourself over time, and you engage, whether it's daily, twice a week, or 3 times a month. Just doing little bits now and then, it adds up. And as I said, a simple thing like setting up a direct debit on your credit card to pay it in full is so easy, yet so powerful in terms of reducing financial stress around credit cards. So we're really proud of our app. So you start by downloading the app on those 2 platforms and giving it a go. And you'll be helping an Aussie startup in the process who wants to go global with this. So because it's not just an Australian problem, this is
Global
pretty
problem.
bad.
It's everywhere. Thank you so much, Andrew. Let me acknowledge you for everything you've done, because I know creating a startup brings its own level of stress with it. So, well done for doing that, and thank you for spending time with us and sharing your story. We'll have to. I feel we've only scratched the surface, and there's so much more that we could talk about in terms of this topic. But I know you're putting out a lot of data now into the marketplace, which is really helping to raise awareness of the problem, and everybody at that starting point to download your app and then begin the journey, because as I say, financial well-being is really one of the foundational stones of total well-being, and it creates all kinds of problems when there's stress there. It really ripples through your life. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you again soon. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lawrence.